Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
You hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I can. Am I as well?
Indeed. Yes. No, it sounds great.
Excellent.
I forgot to remind you that you know, I'm independent here, just where we need to make it clear Xerox aren't involved.
Yeah, I've got some words in there about that. Okay, I've got some words in there about that. So, hi, Ian. Hello, Ian. Do you want me for something? No, it's all right. Not sure what happened there. I'll ring off now, okay? So a couple of minutes to 2 o'clock, okay, by my clock.
Agree. The camera looked good, by the way, because I'm not looking at it.
It's fine to me. I'm not sure we should color coordinate differently because you've got a collar and a blue jumper on, and so have I. Looks like we thought about it. Strange.
Yes.
Can you see my screen okay? It's not on slideshow at the moment, obviously, but
yeah, I can see the introductory one. I've got a little little version of it up at one side.
Christina, can you hear us okay as well? Lovely. Thanks very much, everybody. Christiana, you've asked about being heard or seen. So I think we've got you muted and video off at the moment, Christiana. So so we can't see you here at the moment, but that's by design, so don't worry. All right, good. Yeah, I'll put them in slideshow mode. Are you ready to start recording as well, Christina? Lovely, excellent. So we just turned 2 o'clock. I'll just give another minute or so before we start. We're expecting somewhere around about 150 people to register. Start off in a few minutes. So for all Tim Pierce, you can see in the window next to me, who joined us, who's the co-author of the case study that we'll be speaking about today. We'll run through a process. We're going to run for about an hour today. We've allowed a 15-minute period at the end for questions from yourselves. Tim is going to work through some of the key points, excuse me, within the case study that he's written with us about the Servitization journey. Tim used to work for Xerox, and he's written this study based on his own personal knowledge and using publicly available information from Xerox. We'll give you information about how to download the case study at the end of the webinar, so you'll be able to take that and digest it at leisure and pass it on to others. This is also being recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch this if you'd like to. It's also available for download if you want to share with any of your colleagues, if this particularly resonates with you, with the circumstances that you're seeing in your own business as well. Okay, so essentially I'm going to introduce you to this case study. Xerox is a well-known household name. It's well known for its technical innovations. The next 60 minutes, we're going to, with the help of Tim, we're going to have him highlight some of the challenges and the business innovations that Xerox achieved over the last 20 years or so. It's a case study that shows you how a manufacturer can revolutionize their business and look to play in a servitization way on all parts of what we call the services staircase, and we'll talk through that. And Tim's going to show us how Xerox have leveraged their ability to work through that across that period of time. If you've got questions this afternoon, there is a Q&A section within the Zoom screen. If you could put your questions in there, and we'll try and get through as many of those as we possibly can during a 15-minute period. We'll be running through a presentation, a question and answer session, and we'll try and tackle what we think are the key questions for you. But please put them in the Q&A, and we'll try and get to them during the 15 minutes. If not, we'll make notes of them and try and get back to you if you'd like us to. So just briefly to introduce Tim. Tim's biography shows essentially his depth of knowledge and his insight in the field in which he's going to be speaking. He spent many years at Xerox and has used that insight and the publicly available information from Xerox to put this case study together and explain their journey. Tim is a very experienced international program manager. He's worked across a range of functions within Xerox and elsewhere, and he has got a great insight into the technology and the business sectors in which he's speaking. So good afternoon, Tim.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. First of all, today, we haven't got very long, but I know that we would like to give some context and introduce the audience to Xerox and the business environment in which it found itself, essentially, if that's okay with you. If we kick off with that so that we've got some context in which to see the journey, please.
Yeah, sure. So Xerox, they describe themselves today as a workplace technology company, improving people's work experiences. And they're really tackling work where there's disparate technologies that meet. So obviously around document management as the theme, and smoothing that transition between sort of the physical and digital worlds that we all experience today. As I'm sure you're all aware, Xerox's heritage is built around having invented what at the time was described as dry writing at the press of a button, what we all refer to as copying. And they've got really quite a storied past with Xerox PARC, which is their research arm. But actually, there hasn't been a lot said or written about document-related services, and that's the motivation for writing the document you've spoken about and running the webinar today. So turning to this slide, it shows they've always had a huge addressable market. Actually, it's now 60% of what it was in terms of its core. And you can see in the slide, there's then different ones making up that difference, but in both cases, huge numbers. And there's really been a mixed shift from 2005 to 2019, the two dates, the snapshot, a shift from hardware to services, and that's what the slide highlights. And in there as well, you can see their market position, Xerox's market in the various segments. For an idea of scale, Xerox's 2019 revenues were 9.1 billion, highly cash generative. Always has been, with services playing a key role. So they're 62% of the total count, and with higher gross margins than for hardware. So Ian, that's the introduction to the business. I'll briefly explain to people managed print, given that's the theme that lies behind this. So the managed print offering that this infographic outlines tackles all the print related costs in the office, both the direct ones and the hidden ones. So you can see them called out there on the left. And typically, document management is between 1% and 3% of a company's revenue. So, very significant, can be a lot higher if it's a very document intensive organization. Numbers up to about 10%. And managed print reduces these costs when first introduced by about 30%. So those are the key messages that this infographic delivers and
That's great. Tim, can I just ask you, we're getting a bit of cutting out I can hear at the moment. Could we just turn your video off for the time being so we just concentrate on the sound, if that's okay, Tim?
I'll do my best. Hang on.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Have I gone?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. So, okay, then, so that's great. So the context there is makes it clear what the customer pains were. We'd just like to focus maybe on the within the case study and just think about what is it that the business leaders that are listening to this can get from today's webinar and from the case study in general. What can they take away from this hour from the case study, please?
Well, as I stepped away from Xerox, actually discovered that the journey we've been on as an organization is really quite a rare example of servitization, in the sense it's long standing. So the case study talks people through the 20 years journey. It's been successful as the numbers that I've just illustrate, and it's now fully matured, as you'll see from what comes next. It covers this transformation that I've already hinted at, from being a photocopier vendor to an advanced services provider now, and it offers this longitudinal view, this journey through the servitization process, and what the key events have been along that journey, and the pivotal points in Xerox's overall transformation.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. So that's great. So I'm to allow us to go through the next part, and I want to show the breadth of offers that Xerox has developed across the last 20 years. I'm just introduce you to one of the models that we use within the Advanced Services group here. This is their services staircase. Just briefly explain it to you, and then we're going to go into a more complex version which shows the Xerox offerings. So just to briefly run through this, we could speak for longer about this, but essentially the vertical axis shows, as you go from bottom to top, the increasing potential to be able to create value for manufacturers as they increase and change the offers that they provide. And along the horizontal axis, you can see that essentially the potential for being more competitive and gaining competitive advantage increases, and that's partly through the absorption of risk that the manufacturer is willing to take on. So those are the two axes that we see there, and you can then see the 8 steps in the staircase, and we identify those steps. And generally around the orange at the bottom, you can see that's mainly around the provision of products and product spares. We then move through to the purple area in the middle, where it's about providing maintenance and services, what we call intermediate services. And the top of that one, we call performance advisory. And that's where you're providing assistance from manufacturers to their clients about getting more value from the products. And at the very top, the outcome-based, guaranteeing the outcomes from the product, the process, or the business platform. They're the advanced services that we speak to at the very top. It's a model which we've used and adapted over the years. It's very successful at allowing people to place their offers as they design or establish how they're going to change. And what I'm going to ask you to do, Tim, is if you could please use this map and show what is particularly amazing from Xerox is how Xerox has managed to play across all these areas of the services staircase using this model. Is that okay, Tim?
Yes, of course. So yes, if you put up the Xerox specific one. So here's the overview of the services portfolio Xerox now has, and you can see that it promises business outcomes that are increasingly integrated with the customer's business as you go up the staircase, and from an internal point of view, as you go up, it stretches the internal organization. So in terms of commercial management, professional services, and service delivery in particular. So I won't talk you through the whole staircase because it's quite lengthy to describe, but I'll pick out 3 key steps and talk briefly about those. So for me, the first key one is around advisory, so performance advisory. This is where the data from the network connected devices is gathered to allow initially an audit, find out what the devices are and where they sit, and then the data allows you to plan the transformation of the fleet as the services developed and launched, and then ultimately manage the service once it's in place. And this data can be looked at from a number of perspectives. So you can develop device, user, and document orientated views, which way you slice and dice the data. Then the second step I'd call out is the MPS one, the asset capability one. It's what's labeled as the Xerox Office print service step. And within this, there was obviously quite an evolution. So, it's obviously the service that I talked about in the infographic, and it developed to, or evolved to, cover both Xerox and non-Xerox branded devices. And also to be one that's packaged with a rate carded version, so that that complemented the bespoke builds and enabled the service to go out not only to directly sold customers, but also to smaller customers through partner organizations. And then basic service was supplemented by a next generation set of additional services. So they were themed, they were software enabled, themed around the likes of sustainability, productivity, security, IT integration, and so forth. And the other major evolution is, or more recently, has been to support the increasingly virtual workplace. So that's the second step that I wanted to call out, asset capability. The third and final one is at the top, the platform capability around medical records management, where Managed Print Services provides the ability to print correspondence to patients, send that out, and then print and scan patient forms into the various workflows that in particular UK hospital trusts run. And this is part of the broader Xerox medical records management service that's offered. Okay, so those are the highlights, Ian.
That's great, thank you. I mean, and just to pick out, what's really unusual here is that not many businesses can provide something at every step here, and it's, people often look and they think they need to be pigeonholed into one step or another step. All of these are viable ways of operating a business and being profitable and being successful. So this is all about trying to find the right areas, and in this example with Xerox, they managed to hit them all. It's especially rare to find companies that can offer the platform capability. That's a potentially game-changing alteration for your customer by providing a really high level of outcome guaranteed service. That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Tim. So we've gone sort of from a model to this complete range of offers that Xerox has got. I know we've got a case, some examples within the case study, particular customers. Could you maybe just talk me through one of the example contracts from the case study, just to go through back to a detailed example of what actually happened with one of these offers, please, Tim?
Yeah, sure. So the one I've picked out is Northumbria University. This is a further education organisation, northeast of England. And you can see here, it outlines the situation, what the challenge was, the solution, and the results. You've moved from it in. There we go. So all about supporting their theme of digital transformation, so that the university's ambitions around a digital curriculum. This service for me was slightly unusual in that it's sort of B2B2C, meaning that it supported not only the staff in the university, but also the students. And so two separate communities, if you like. And it's a managed print service, plus it's got a centralized print and design service embedded. So this includes an on-site Xerox comms manager who manages the flow of jobs that comes into a centralized print facility to produce university branded materials and documents. So there's a sort of a communications element, outbound communications element to the service as well. And then there's also, you'll see in the description, some IT integration to handle the financial flows that are associated. And it produced some extraordinary results. So you can see those on the right-hand side, calls out the numbers. You can see much lower costs around, driven primarily around consolidating the fleet and optimizing it. It supported them going digital, as it was promised at the start with the theme, and provides this brand consistency around their marketing communication through the comms manager. It also provides improved sustainability, so contributes to the university sustainability agenda, because through having that controlled print collateral process, it actually avoids having stockpiled collaterals that in many cases end up being wasted, that would have otherwise been produced through an off-site printing. So that's the case study in brief summary.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. I mean, what I particularly love is that quote on the right-hand side about the vision that they had to become a top 30 UK university, and they picked on the digital transformation, sustainability, and obviously Xerox chimed in exactly with that bigger vision the customer's looking for, and that's something we encourage people to be looking at as they're looking to offer new services, to look at the higher mission of the customer and look at how they can help them achieve that. And certainly the numbers that you've got here, that those levels of 80-90% of reductions and saving in space and saving in print costs are show that the numbers match up with we're trying to achieve that sort of high level purpose that the university was showing. That's great. All right, that's good. That just shows a real example of the massive difference that Xerox made to Northumbria University. Okay, that's great. What I'm going to go to next is I'm going to just introduce another one of our models that we use at the Advanced Services Group. I'm going to run you through this because it's quite a busy slide, but it's a vital model that we've used. And then I'm going to ask Tim to then talk through some of the timelines that Xerox faced when they were working through their journey as well. So this transformation roadmap we've been working on, it's a result of research we've done with over 40 executives who have been through this journey. It shows 4 key stages that we see when we're working with clients who are looking towards moving to advanced services or servitizing their business. There's an exploration phase, there's an engagement phase, there's then a period of expansion as they start to scale up their business, and then on the right hand side there's the exploiting, which is when you're making the very most of the market opportunity. You can see there's a nice graphic there about roundabouts, etc. Now, those roundabouts tend to be the areas where there are pivotal points that require a moving on, stepping on between one phase to the other, characterized by different things as you go through the journey. It's a picture we show, and on the outside of the graphic, you can see the 4 forces that we see are crucial to success at pulling you through and pushing you through this model. At the top, you've got market-centric forces, so that's the level of pull that you're getting from within your customers. At the bottom, you've got technology-centric, which is the level of technology development, particularly digital, now that affects the progression. On the right-hand side is what we call value network-centric forces, which shows where the manufacturer sits within the value network that delivers the value to the customer. And then on the left-hand side, what we call organization-centric forces. That's something about the readiness of the organization, the maturity of the organization, ready to move on through this journey of servitizing your business from exploration through to expansion and then commercial exploitation. So that's the map we've got there. And what Tim has managed to do is he's looked at the journey that Xerox have been through. And one of the questions I know in the Q&A was around the timing of some of these things. And he's just going to very quickly go through some of the key points at which some of the decisions and some of the big major changes took place for Xerox. So if that's okay, Tim, I'll move on to the next slide, and I'll ask you just to pull out some of the things which are on this roadmap and the things that you just like to share with the audience about the changes that took place within Xerox.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, to re-emphasize what Ian's saying, the full story is in the case study, and there's a lot of detail in there. But the highlights I'd first pull out around the forces at play. because they're worth speaking to in their own right. So first of all, on the technology front, from Xerox's point of view, the base technology had moved from being an electromechanical copier through to a networked IT asset, multifunction device that was on customer's network. So that was the technology force at play here. And then organizationally, Xerox needed to strengthen the core business. Just as at the turn of the millennium, they weren't very well documented, but Xerox was near bankruptcy for a number of dynamic reasons, and needed to come up with a plan that strengthened core business, set the organization on the path. Then there were market-centric forces at play. So with the devices becoming networked, viewed as an IT asset, documents being placed on the network, there was a growing understanding that there were cost savings to be made from better management of such as these. So this emerging focus on total cost of ownership amongst the client base. And then from a value network centric point of view, as these services emerged in the directly sold model, channel partners also wanted access to a version of the service so that they could serve their customers broader market in a similar but appropriate way. So those were the forces that were at play from Xerox's point of view. We then look through the journey. I pull out points C and D first. This was around the business case and the buy-in. So two critical elements to have. In Xerox's case, they came through the corporate turnaround plan, given what I said about the near bankruptcy situation. And in building the plan, the criteria that were applied were looking for areas of high growth, where customers, areas where customers needed help, and where Xerox had core competence. So 3 simple key criteria. And in the process of applying them, the intent was clearly to move upstream in the client's organization to become viewed as a strategic partner rather than a straightforward supplier. So that's the first part of the journey I'd call out. The second area points F, G, and H. So this is around the value proposition and setting up pilots. So as a starting point here, in building the strategic plan, there was an industry report at the time that said that 2/3 of businesses were working on reducing document management costs. A lot of the reasons I've covered, and this prompted a value proposition to emerge around being able to reduce the typical spend per employee by $25 from $100 a month, 30% cost that talked about. And the pilots were then run to validate the value proposition with key customers that we had at the time, people like Sun Microsystems, Dow Chemicals, and Microsoft. So customers fit those criteria that I called. The third area in this journey I'd like to pull out is point S, which is around delivery efficiency. And here, some years later, we acquired a company called Newfield IT, a UK-based company that specialists in print analytics. And this was to strengthen the data-driven approach that is required here, and to strengthen the analytics capabilities that I referred to earlier in making this. And then finally, point B on the journey. This is around the evolving technology in the base devices, device assets. So technology called Connect Key is embedded in the devices, and what's called a smart assistant. So essentially, this is together. These are a touch key, or touch screen with access to a library of workflow applications that obviously help people do their personal work in the office. And these can be customized and personalized to optimize their own workflows. And essentially, it's all done through a screen that looks like a giant smartphone on a bigger scale attached. And those are the key points.
Okay, thank you, Tim. And you can see from the letters here, so Tim's picked out some of them, but they're shown in more detail in the case study. And we've also put a timeline against that as well. So we've taken that out for the benefit of going to the case study today. But you show the time that it took from going from A through to V here, and we know that essentially showed a journey length, Tim, that was probably approaching, I guess, 20 years in terms of its full gestation. Is that fair? Is that a sort of timeline that we would say that it took?
Yes, from start to finish in the roadmap you've got up on the screen, it is indeed 20 years.
And so I guess on reflection, it's always easy with hindsight, isn't it? And looking at it from the point of view where we are now and seeing what's happened to digital. But would you say that this has been faster or slower than you'd expect to see an organization change? Does it feel slow looking back on it, or do you think it moved fast? What's your reflections on the speed? We often get asked by people who are at the beginning of the journey, and they look at a roadmap like this and they say, how long will it take me to get from exploration to expansion or exploitation? How long will I spend in each phase? And of course, it varies by customer and by niche, etc. But what would be your view about that 20-year long period, Tim?
Well, as we said at the start, I mean, I think this is documenting an organisation in a sector which was pretty groundbreaking in developing this tiered set of services that we've briefly talked through. So I'd say broadly defined, characterised by the models that you've explained, Ian, and also sort of coloured, I suppose, through sessions, experience sharing sessions like this. So, next time around, I'd expect it to be, it's potentially quicker to scale. It's helped by technology being more broadly available now. The infrastructure being more readily available, and of course, people having a greater appreciation of the data and what's required of it to get the insights to build the services. So, all of this is more accessible than it was, but it also means, I think, the market demands a faster progress. Looking back at Xerox, well, the scale of the operation to transform and Xerox's historical product focus, significant challenge, as did the sort of cultural change that was involved. And actually, I think, reflecting on it, it's probably that last point, the cultural change, that will determine other people's rate of progress.
Okay, so that's interesting, because the next thing I was going to ask you, Tim, really was again someone looking at this and looking forward for their own business. What would you say are the biggest challenges that Xerox had to overcome, and that others may face as well? So you've picked out cultural change as one of the key challenges that are there. There's that, and what would the other one or two key challenges be that you'd call out that people need to be aware of as they're looking to learn from this and take on their own journey?
Well, yeah, cultural change, and of course, then people's skill sets. You're looking at selling, making a consultative sale here, because you're selling on the basis of addressing customer pain points, and ultimately the customer's bottom line. So it's different conversation with a different set of decision makers as well in the client. There's a risk assessment to make and to sort of digest. There's then the ultimate delivery of the service, the continuous improvement process that comes with that, and with the sales process. And the transfer of knowledge that needs to happen between functions, between client teams, and so forth. So I think all of those are elements that need to be understood to around the changing culture, and that's all part of the bigger internal transformation that needs to happen around the business model. And obviously there's other elements too. So managing ultimately a services ecosystem with SLAs, not a linear product sales process, operations process. And then also looking at the financial aspects as well. So the P&L implications. In Xerox, the annuity model was well understood. That they already had and mailroom services could well be a bigger challenge for others coming into the field. But with managed print, there was still an expanded cost base for Xerox, and a whole different set of financial dynamics to understand as well.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
Sorry,
I would say ultimately it was all driven by this focus on tackling customer pain points, as we talked about in the university case study, making sure that you get the customer experience right, and that ultimately you deliver a compelling business case.
Yeah. So there were some building blocks there that helped them, like the knowledge of the leasing model that maybe others is very new to them. Can I just go back? You mentioned criteria towards the early part of our discussion about choosing customers. So you made the point that the vital thing is good understanding of customer pains and gains. If you go back to that piece about criteria, I'm interested, again, another topic that we find people need to spend time on is understanding how they segment for advanced services. Could you just remind us, again, you touched on it briefly before, how did Xerox approach their market segmentation? What criteria, or how did they group their customers to know who to tackle and who to work with, Tim?
So just earlier on, when we were talking about the strategic growth plan in the early years of the millennium, it was targeting areas of high growth, where customers needed help. And Xerox had the core competencies to provide that help. So that's, I think, the starting point. Then, actually having the core competency managing documents in enterprises specifically, and where customers were looking at then reducing costs. That was a second layer, I suppose, of the thought process, and then picking out in particular technology and document intensive organizations, because they were the ideal place to start, I think, of interest. That those early adopters that I named earlier, like Sun Microsystems and Dow Chemicals. But ultimately, if you're looking, at numbers, line numbers, what Xerox was doing with managed print services, then really it was looking at targeting those that have had a high device count, big fleet of print devices, high print throughput, and also those that have had a high priority on sustainability, on improving the sustainability of their operations. That's more pervasive now, but earlier on in the journey, it was another theme to pick out target organisations with.
So, like with Northumbria, perhaps sustainability they called out early. They were ahead of the curve, maybe, in terms of pulling out those companies that they found that very interesting. Yeah,
or some of the large organised. If you're looking back over the 20 years, the Northumbria engagement is much more recent one. If you're looking back at the earlier days, then sustainability that corporations have were perhaps less pervasive than they are today.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Okay, Tim, thank you very much indeed. What I'd like to do is I'm going to just go to some questions from the audience too, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I've got some to run through. So I've got one from, and I apologise for any mispronunciation of names here. So Kevin Hallis has a question for you here, Tim. So his question is, and it's a current one, which is: has servitization for companies like Xerox, has it made them more or less resilient through COVID? Or have the effects been more about the sector than the actual business model? So what's your view about how COVID has impacted on Xerox? And is it a business model issue for them, or is it a sector issue? What's your views, Tim?
So I think it's a mix of both. I mean, from the point of view of financial resilience, having these annuity-based contracts provide to deliver services to customers, I think has protected them more than they would have otherwise been protected financially through COVID. Obviously, it ultimately depends on how the contracts are written. To what extent there's guarantees written in there to be paid regardless of what the usage patterns are of the devices. So, risks need to be financial risks of contracting service need to be thought about and highlighted by the situation of COVID. That's from a financial point of view. From a sector point of view, people haven't been in the office as much as they were before the lockdowns, and that's obviously impacted people's use of office print because they're not there to be able to use the devices. That said, having the ability to support people virtually again helps maintain access, I suppose, to the print environment. But you can see from Xerox's numbers, and I'm sure from other people's too, that COVID's had a big impact. They're still profitable, still generating cash, but not at the rate they were before COVID. Okay,
Tim, I think I'll just also draw a comparison. We've also had we've all been speaking with Rolls-Royce in recent months, and Rolls-Royce has had a major impact, obviously, with COVID as well, because of the impact on the aviation industry. But just to echo on the tone of the question, that was very much a sector issue. So anybody who works in the aircraft industry is affected by COVID impact on the sectors. That was a sector issue, and the servitization model, the revenues that Rolls-Royce get through their business through services has remained, in comparison, relatively stable. So again, that's a sector-wide thing as opposed to a business model. So it's interesting to see the comparison for Rolls-Royce as another exemplar in this field, as well as Xerox. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I've got another question here from Wilhelm Torrell, and I'm not sure whether this is something that you might want to go back to the staircase for, Tim. Wilhelm was asking, he said, it'd be interesting to know the dates or years when the various offerings that you're presenting on the staircase came into the Xerox portfolio. And I don't know if you can do that off the cuff by looking at the staircase, Tim, or a more general answer. How would you like to do? Would you like to go back to the staircase and just give an indication of when these things came in, or would you like to do it differently?
I think it can be answered at two levels. So by all means, put the staircase up.
Yeah, okay. I'll just go back to that.
So if you look at these individual services, ones in each of the steps, then they evolved over time, and naturally you needed the ones at the lower levels before you could build to the higher levels. The ones around maintenance are sort of pre-analytics. They existed in the 90s and into the early thousands. Managed print emerged in 2001, 2002 in the form that's described in this webinar. And actually, if you then look at what was said by the CEO at the time, I'm just trying to find her words here. He said in 2007 that, so just bear with me, I think it's worth hearing though. Turnarounds are easy to track and to talk about. Transformations evolve more slowly and are harder to define. Over the past several years, step by step and brick by brick, we have built a new Xerox. I believe we're at an inflection point. We've evolved into a services-led technology company that's known for innovation and customer focus. That was 2007, and if you think that managed print was one of the key services, then it took roughly 6 to 7 years to get from the starting point post the corporate crisis to financial crisis to the point of that statement. So, things evolved over time. That's one measure, about six years to mature, service. And the others then followed. So if you then look at what's at the top of the staircase, the likes of records management at the top, that out as a second example we've already mentioned. That evolved from actually the first contract was signed in 2009, and they've now in the UK, and there's now multiple ones that have been acquired, and another 5, 6, 7 year journey to get a reasonable client base on a service, albeit a more substantial, more bespoke service in that case.
Okay, thank you, Tim. If we can just speak a little bit louder, we're just cutting a little bit as we went through that last answer. Next question is from Brian Gillespie. Brian, you've got 2 questions here. I'm going to take your first one. We've got a number of questions here. I'm going to take your first one. We'll pick up on the second one offline. Brian asks around the Northumbria case study you went through. He points out there were 1,700 less printers on campus. And his question is about, did the services income make up for what looks like a drop in product income? And if it was a drop, how was this sold internally, and what internal barriers were there within Xerox about making such a change? Can you talk to what happened and how that was seen within the business at all, Tim?
Sure. So first of all, I've moved the microphone closer to me, so hopefully it'll be easier to hear me from now on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think Northumbria is a very dramatic example because there were a lot of personal printers scattered around the university estate. And so one of the dynamics at play here was that those personal printers were removed, and people had then access to higher function devices that were shared, still had the security features necessary to make sure the documents remained private where people needed them to. In the process of doing that, of course, you're taking out devices from a whole range of manufacturers. So, this was not an income loss to Xerox, because what we were doing was replacing, a whole mix of brands by one consistent, optimized fleet. Of course, in doing that, we were delivering a service. So there's obviously, there's a service income stream there that far exceeds what would have been earned just by placing devices and leaving them for the university to manage. Of course, the throughput, all things being equal, would be the same anyway. It's just through this consolidated set of devices.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it's a point we often see about people as they come into a client. They don't just take over their own product install base. They also offer to take over competitors and other equipment on site as well. So that's what we see elsewhere. Okay, that's great, Tim. Thank you very much indeed. Next question I've got here is from Sophia Botaro, and Sophia wants to know about you, but it could be Xerox, it may not be yourself, Tim. How did they go about choosing the price and pricing the advanced services that they were on offer? What was the process internally getting pricing right?
Okay, so obviously there's a number of different elements to building the service, and those elements need to be identified and costed, and then in delivering a service to a particular client, in particular, a large one, you need to assess the risks involved as well, and that can then involve some additional direct costs in mitigating those risks directly, or if you like, some cash put to one side to mitigate any future impact. So it's a bottom-up build on that basis, and then obviously you're looking at the other end at what its value to the customer is, what the business case is that you're building as part of the sales process to the client, and what that yields in terms of savings, even which you can afford to offer the service for. So that's where then the price to market, the bottom-up costing.
Okay, again, if you could just keep, I think we're just losing your voice a little bit sometimes when you're getting quiet, Tim, just to give you feedback. I think we've got all of that. So I think I just pick up the last point, which is about creating the size of the what we call the value pool, about what the opportunity is for creating value with the customer, and then trying out of that to carve out the pricing for that. So thank you, Sophia, for your question there. A question from Frank Marks. He says, thank you, Tim, for presenting a very nice roadmap on the Xerox servitization. His question is that there is lately some discussion about something he's calling deservitization, or certainly about splitting up of companies and splitting up a company like Xerox. Have you got any comment about maybe the splitting up of the Xerox business in terms of maybe the services or the product businesses that they offer? Have any thoughts on that at all?
Sure. So in the Xerox, in the case of Xerox, in the roadmap, in that journey, the one that we last showed, you'll see that over the 20 years, there was a point at which Xerox acquired a diversified business process outsourcing organization called ACS. And then 9-10 years later, there was a split. The organization split in two, and broadly speaking, that same organization, what was ACS, split out again. So using Xerox as an example, I don't see that has any impact on the evolution of servitization within Xerox. They were different streams of business, but complementary ones and neighboring ones. At a sort of a here and from the point of view of here and now, some of the more recent news from Xerox is around them looking at setting up 3 of the existing operations within Xerox as standalone organizations. So that's Xerox Park, the research arm, Xerox Financial Services, and the third is the software business. And so, of course, in future, those could become financially independent as well as operationally independent of Xerox. We just don't know yet. But again, it doesn't, I don't see why it would impact the maturity of the services we're talking about here. It's just that, the component parts of the organization would have to work with one another in a different way if they were independently owned. Okay,
thank you very much indeed. Next question comes from Marina Pieroni, and she's interested. She's referring back to the infographic which showed the benefits of costs, etc., and just wondered if you've got any examples or point towards any areas where there's a similar sort of quantification of the sustainability impact of Xerox solutions. So I guess a version that uses a similar infographic to show how sustainability can be quantified. Have you any examples? Have you come across anything on that at all, Tim?
So certainly, so I don't have an infographic. I'm not aware of one having been produced like that. However, certainly have been involved in looking at the impact on a customer sustainability agenda of reducing print. So that's definitely possible using a lot of the aggregated data that Newfield IT has, and that's an element of what was Newfield IT, and that's an element of the analytics service that Xerox now provides. They can make an assessment of the impact on a company's sustainability agenda, carbon footprint. But it is possible, is the simple answer. It just hasn't been published in the way that that higher level MPS infographic.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so it's there, but maybe not an infographic just to go and look at. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I think you've picked up a little bit of this when we were talking about the splitting up of Xerox. You spoke about acquisition. So a question here from Lino Markfort. What strategy has Xerox pursued along its servitization journey in terms of collaborations and partnerships to acquire critical expertise? I know you mentioned a couple of those we're going through, but any other particular collaborations, partnerships that they joined in with to get that critical expertise you'd like to pick out?
Well, one of the early partnerships was around early in the terms of this journey that we have up on the screen here, was with GE. The equipment needed financing as part of the service. We had a captive funding organization, Xerox Finance, that pre-existed, but it couldn't support the growth ambitions of the organization given the state it was in the early 2000s. So GE Finance was partnered with to serve a number of key markets, the likes of US, France, Germany, and a number of others. And then later on, it came back wholly. It came back in-house, wholly in-house, once things had stabilized. But certainly that was a key partnership at the time. One very good example. Another is with what was called Fuji Xerox. It was actually a joint venture, so partnership in a different form, I suppose. That's lasted 60 years. It was there primarily to provide coverage in Asia Pacific. It's now recently changed form, dramatically changed form. It's no longer known as Xerox anymore, Fuji Xerox anymore. It's got a new name that's been announced over the last week. But the second example of, for a long period of time, a partnership that provided geographic coverage, very important geographic coverage, and access to complementary.
I think I just kind of about geographical coverage or extension there. Okay, so I've got good news, bad news, Tim. The good news is we've managed to get through nine questions. The less good news is we've got 11, which we're not going to get through this afternoon. So, we've got them here. I think we're going to be able to capture them from the people that are involved. So we've got the registration details. So we'll try and get back to you with the questions as best we can if we don't think we've answered them as we've gone through. So okay. I'm going to have to call a halt to the Q&A. So I'm sorry for those of you, and some of you are posting second questions. That's great, and some of you are on your first question, so we wanted to get through to those. So Tim, that's been really good. Maybe you could just update us with, as we said before, you're outside Xerox now. What's next for Tim Pearce then? What are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, so towards the end of last year, I joined an organisation called Invigors, and we help clients. So along the same theme, you can probably detect got developed quite an interest for advanced services. So with Invigors, we help clients develop and market services around a broader range of assets, business assets. So that's really intriguing for me. So this is taking the conversation to assets that range from plant and machinery to vehicles and a broader range of technology, software included. And obviously this is to help customers like Xerox have achieved remain relevant, highly relevant to what their clients need. Resilient, financially resilient, and sustainable. We're actually a pretty unique mix of people. So we've got deep backgrounds from both a manufacturer's perspective and a funder's perspective, working in both. And we advise on equipment-based funding, outcome-based services, asset lifecycle management, and the business transformation that comes with all of this from the funder's perspective and the manufacturer. So that's what I'm doing now.
That's great. Well, you've obviously been bitten by the bug of servitization. It's not left you, Tim. So that's quite evident from what you've said and how you've said it today, and what you're up to now. That's lovely. So just at the last few minutes, I just want to share with you, those of you who are new to us at the Advanced Services Group, if you've not come across us before, here's a slide that just tells you a little bit more about us. And also how to contact us as well. As a group, we work with manufacturers globally and locally, and we're there to accelerate and maximize the journey towards competing through advanced services. That's the focus of what we do. It's in our name. It's what we do with companies, and we've been working with hundreds of companies across the years to servitize their business. And you can see we work in various ways through research, partnership, and also do advisory support as well. If you would like a conversation with us about how we can help you, there's a way to reach out to us there by email. Go to a website. You can contact me on LinkedIn as well. We'd be delighted to have a conversation with you. You can also see the resources that we have on our website, case studies and etc., that will show you how other people have done it. And you can also access the research that we do. We are the highest peer-reviewed and cited researchers in the world in our field, and you can see the papers and the work that we do, along with some videos and podcasts and so on. So please reach out to us if you'd like a conversation and like to find out more. We'd be delighted to talk to you. We enjoy it. It's our passion. We love talking about manufacturers, about how they can compete through services and be more successful. So we've done a really fairly quick run through. What Tim has managed to do with us is put together a 20-year journey into a concise case study that helps to explain how one company, Xerox, has gone through a dramatic change from those 90s pictures to the medical records at the very top of that staircase. It hopefully will help you to see and give you confidence and see a way through pursuing the journey for your own business as well. To get a hold of the copy, if you go to our website again, you'll find the Xerox case studies there for you. You can download for free. You can obviously share that. This recording of the webinar will be available, and you can again watch it again, and you can also share it with colleagues if it's particularly resonated with you and the business challenges that you see in front of you as well. So I'm hoping that's been very useful for you. And the last thing I'm just going to finish off with today, before I just thank Tim for his efforts today, is I'm delighted to announce that we are launching our Servitization Live event. We're opening up registration for this event. It takes place from the 4th to 6th of October this year. It's a virtual business event. It's around the concept of everything as a service. This builds on the great success of our World Servitization Convention that we held last September 2020 in the midst of COVID lockdown. Registrations are now open. You can go to the website there. It's a special website open just for this event as well. It's a place where you can fill your boots about how other companies, other sectors are learning how to provide things as a service. We strongly recommend you to come along and join us with that 3-day event. It's being timed to match up with time zones across the world, in Europe and Americas, and also in Asia as well. So we're hoping that's another way in which you can find out more, but please don't wait till then. Please contact us before then if you wish to. So it just falls to me now just to say, Tim, thank you very much indeed for the effort you put in both today with the case study and sharing that story and giving us your interpretation. So thank you very much indeed, Tim. It's been a delight to hear you speak on that topic.
You're welcome, Ian. Thanks, everyone.
That's everybody. Thank you very much indeed, buddy. We've enjoyed speaking to you. Please get in contact and look out for our next webinars. And please remember to sign up for our Servitization Live event in October. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.